Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada and Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south, in the land of the free and the home of the brave, on a beautiful March the 25th, 2021. Rondo Deportes, bonjour, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, a troubling day down here in the south. We've had a lot of tornado sweeps through down here, but the most troubling of all was in the state of Georgia, where the governor today signed into legislation voting restriction laws that are going to take that state back some 60 years as far as voting restrictions, Charlton, because they didn't like the way that many Democrats and black voters came out and voted in the last election, and it's sweeping through 43 different states right now. Once again, I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, doctors, first responders. They don't care about who's in office. They go out and do their job every day.
They go out and do their job every day, and many of them also want to vote every time they get the chance. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. When you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. Also, all around the world, say Google or Alexa play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away. And I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Spotify. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. If you better have a smart TV, or you'll be sitting there looking at a still picture. Man, it's good to pause. You know, pausing is good, but I will never pause on our Veterans Crisis Hotline. They really are experienced helping veterans and their loved ones get help. Big C, why should everybody care?
Well, Charlton, the veteran suicide rate in this country is a horrific number, Charlton. That epidemic is as big as any epidemic in this country. When you look at the percentage of our military force people, Charlton, who have dove into suicide, and we need to find a way as a country to pay more attention to them and get them out of that rut that they've fallen into, Charlton. We give out the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, but we need to think more of our veterans every day on a serious nature. You know, we all preoccupied with everything that's going on, trying to get our COVID vaccination, trying to, get over COVID fatigue, Charlton, dealing with the financial crisis. But our veterans have provided a way of life for us in America, and we need to find a way to keep those great veterans alive more and more every day.
More and more every day. We will do our part. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net. You can definitely get some help for our veterans and their loved ones. Also very happy to be affiliated with Valley, home with weekly TV on Dish TV, DirecTV, AT&T Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants, and the Say Hey Kid, as well as the Home Run King Barry Bonds. When you reach out to them, just tell them Big C sent you. It's all fair and love and war. And we want to help do one thing, and one thing specifically. We want to recruit 10,000 real estate agents and brokers all over this great country, helping to put people back to work, just like McDonald's does it, car dealerships do it, sports teams do it, watch TV, and real estate work for you. 800-772-8624. If you're looking for opportunities in real estate, go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. Most of our loans are underwritten by Rocket Mortgage, the #1 lender in the country on the wholesale side. Really appreciate that. It's all fair and love and war. I also want to say thank you to Xfinity Comcast TV and Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. Just like God said, let there be light. Open your cell phones and say, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will see all of our apps pop up from all over the world. And I really do appreciate the way things have grown with Big C Sports. When we keep rising and shining, things keep growing, and I really do appreciate that. Big C, I know you said, and I saw on the news, as again, it's a little overcast in California, but it's about 70 degrees here in Northern California. but I hear there's a lot of tornadoes that are swinging through the South. Big C, your thoughts?
Oh, yes, there are, Charlton. They've been horrific down in the state of Alabama. There has been some unfortunate loss of life. But this is one of the things that the South deals with this time of the year, Charlton, with the barometric pressures changing all the time. And, we get the cold and the hot air mixing with each other, the humidity, and unfortunately it causes tornadoes.
Yeah, I hope that everybody can stay safe as much as humanly possible, and especially our first responders. They're the ones that come to the rescue when people call out for help, and I hope they have a lot of success helping people, if that makes sense to you. I want to touch on African-American history, Big C. In the world of sports, we're inspired every day by the endeavors of lesser-known African-American athletes. We celebrate their accomplishments. Every pro team's Jackie Robinson, that's the person that most people think about when they talk about celebrating success. But there's a history of success, and sometimes much well-known success, but it's not well known to mainstream, Big C. August 22nd, 1950, Althea Gibson, the United States Lawn Tennis Association officials, they accepted a 23-year-old Harlem native, Althea Gibson, into their annual championship, Big C, at Forest Hills, New York, making her the first African-American woman and player to compete in a U.S. tennis tour. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I love recognizing the accomplishments of African-American female athletes over history, and just female women, period.
Yeah.
Because we tend to forget about them because people want to celebrate the male athlete so much like the other gender did not exist.
Right.
But when you think about the social and athletic impact that Althea Gibson had, she's a trailblazer for so many black athletes we have today. We celebrate the Williams sisters.
Yeah.
Without Althea Gibson, we may not have them. We celebrate Tiger Woods. Without Althea Gibson being there, we may not have Tiger Woods. The late Arthur Ashe.
Yeah.
Althea Gibson was a trailblazer for many black men and women, and people just don't recognize her enough on the history of sports across America.
That's why I love the Big C Sports History Channel, if that makes sense to you, when you think about sociological and also historical influence of August 25th, 1950. It was enormous for African Americans, Big C, and white Americans too, to see what has happened. You think about their pursuit of breaking down the color lines and paving the way for equality and equal opportunities as Althea Gibson, Big C, became the first African American to compete in the United States National Championships. Think about her inclusion in America's biggest tennis event. It wasn't just about gaining acceptance in the sporting world, but it seemed as momentum in a building block for African Americans, not just in sports, but in also life. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it was, Charlton. When you think about, as I've constantly said on our program, how the exclusion of black athletes left out of the playing fields, Charlton, lessened the power of sports in America. But they also knew from the other perspective, Charlton, the minute that they let black athletes in, based on their great athletic ability, that how they could become dominant in particular sports. And we've seen it over the years, and even since we started doing this series about every team's Jackie Robinson, how pronounced that black athletes have been.
It's so true. It's like there's a show of TV channel called the History Channel, and we do it with the African American History Channel. So you think about what Jackie Robinson did for baseball by being in the Brooklyn Dodgers starting lineup at first base. It was April 15th, 1947. The great Althea Gibson did it for tennis when she made her historic debut, defeating Barbara Knapp, Big C, 6-2 to 6-2 in the first round. You think about Gibson also what she did, and she did this in Jim Crow. That means it's the same stuff Georgia's trying to pull with stopping people from having equality. She did it in Jim Crow. She had a jam-packed 8-year career, all with her major championships coming from 1956 to 1958 when she appeared in a stunning 19 major finals, Big C, and she won 11 titles in those finals. Big C, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, you look at her win percentage. I mean, as we celebrate, Serena Williams chasing a record, Charlton, Althea Gibson held a record.
Yeah.
Early on, and she did that through Jim Crow. You think about the vitriol that black men went through during those days, Charlton. Think about a black woman.
Yeah.
The threats and bad language that she had to deal with in every tournament. People berating her because of her great athleticism. She was a good-looking young black woman, Charlton, but people were intimidated by her.
Yeah.
And so you think about the intimidation that black athletes put on white society. in the 40s and 50s and 60s here in America. That the only way that they could try to deal with that, Charlton, was through racial attacks.
Yeah.
And they did that consistently, hoping that they could break them down. But the superiority of that black mind that would not fall into that trap, Charlton, made those efforts fail.
Yeah, all life began on the African continent. Everybody knows that. The Romans knew it. Everybody knows it's all fair and love and war. And when you think about the 11 of the 19 majors finals, she won 11. 5 were in singles. In the French in 1956, Wimbledon 1957 and 1958, and the U.S. Nationals 1957 and 1958. 5 in the women's doubles, Big C. The French 1956, the Australian in 1957, Wimbledon in 1956, 57, and 58, and 1 in mixed doubles at the United States in 1957. After that remarkable run of accomplishments, think about how great she was. She became the first African-American to compete on the Women's Professional Golf Tour in 1960, Big C. Your thoughts?
You know, here it is. She felt that she could accomplish all she could on the tennis circuit.
Yeah.
But also she couldn't make a living on the tennis circuit.
Yeah.
So she goes out, Charlton, and competes in the golf circuit and becomes one of the top grossing women on the professional golf circuit.
Yeah.
So, you know, we've constantly talked about how great male athletes are when they always want to laminate on who's the GOAT. But think about this. You got a black woman in the 50s, Charlton. She goes out and she's dominating in 2 different professions. You know, we've talked about Bo Jackson, Deion Sanders going across the playing 2 professional sports. But Althea Gibson dominated 2 professional sports, Charlton, in a time when it was not even safe for a black woman to walk up and down the street alone, or even with somebody.
Yeah.
And she's going out dominating white women during that time, you know, and to have the grace to do that and be successful. This is why I hate that we don't celebrate enough black history in this country and talk about the great accomplishments of black people in totality.
Well, that's why God created the Black History Sports Channel. It's called Big C Sports until, think about this, until Yvonne Goolong, Big C, who was from Australian Aboriginal family, won the French Open and Wimbledon Ladies Singles Championship in 1971, just out of Jim Crow, Big C. Gibson held that distinction of being the only woman of color to win a major championship for 15 years. And the only reason that she wouldn't have more is because she wasn't allowed to participate in every single one of the tournaments she wanted to be a part of. But hailing from the small rural town of Silver, South Carolina, the Gibson family, they moved north in search of a brighter life and brighter future, stronger financial future, Big C, settled in Harlem in 1930s, and few could predict that 20 years later, Gibson would become the first African-American to grace the August 26, 1957 color of Time magazine in September 1957, the cover of Sports Illustrated. Big C, your thoughts?
You know, and like I said, you know, Charlton, when we think about black women and how powerful they've been and how strong they've been in black society in America, that they are the backbone of every man's success.
Yep.
When you think about Althea Gibson and what she's able to accomplish, gracing the cover of these 2 national magazines, the 2 largest national magazines of that era, as far as mainstream and sports.
Yep.
We have a black woman gracing the cover of those, Charlton, showing elegance and dignity.
Yep.
That's what she brought to the culture of America. And yet she could not get the respect of American citizens. And when you think about the history books, Charlton, and even the sports history books, they try to hide her accomplishments to let the world and even America know how great she was and what she meant to all of us.
Yeah, it's amazing. And that's why I asked everyone to Google Dr. Leakey and Gregor Mendel, and they were considered the experts when it comes to science and paleontology. They all opine that all life came from Africa. It'd be amazing if people had more opportunities. We talk about opportunity now, and in Georgia, you're saying the governor signed a bill trying to get rid of voting rights opportunities for many people of color. And
No, they signed it to get rid of voting rights. What they did, they put voting restrictions back 55 years today in the state of Georgia.
Yeah.
It's a law. The state legislature passed it. The governor signed it into law. We got 43 states in America that's going to follow that as a blueprint, Charlton. And so unless they pass SR1 in the United States Senate, voting restrictions in America will be limited for all minorities.
Well, fear not, they will pass H.R. 1. It's just like in a fight. There's always someone trying to knock you out, but you got to fight back or just get knocked out, but they'll fight back. It's not going to be signed. It's going to be signed in the law, but it's going to be defeated. It's all fair, love, and war. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy. Nothing in life is easy, but we got to rise and shine. Speaking of easy, nothing's easy in the NBA. There's a movie that I loved when I was a little boy. It was called The Wizard of Oz. And Dorothy, that little Dorothy, she said, there's no place like home. She kept trying to get to the Wizard of Oz and find a place to call home. A lot of NBA players, Big C, they're looking for the Wizard of Oz because they just got traded from home. They've been moving around the continent. Is all fair, love, and war. NBA news, the Aaron Fox Sacramento Kings dropped 37 points. Tyrese Halliburton made a pair of free throws with 36.6 seconds remaining. And the Sacramento Kings beat the Atlanta Hawks 110-108. It was Wednesday night, Big C. Also, Halliburton finished with 17 points in the capital city of California. 7 assists, the great Buddy Hield. He dropped 14. Rashawn Holmes had 16 points and 8 rebounds. The great Clint Capella, Big C. He dropped 25 points, the great Clint Capella. 17 rebounds for the Hawks, Big C. They had their wings were clipped last night. They lost back-to-back games after winning their first 8 under interim coach Nate McMillan. And the Aaron Fox shot 13 of 20. And it rattled Atlanta's defense all night. I think he's a much more dominant player with longer hair, though, Big C, your thoughts.
Well, Charlton, I got to think that, Atlanta was still in a little dismay after that 8-game winning streak that they had.
Yeah.
And they gave up that 22-point lead in the second half a couple days ago to the Clippers, and they just did not recover from that.
Yeah.
That's the problem when you have a young team, is that they don't always have the fortitude to come back from adversity.
Yeah, it's funny you say they gave up the big lead, Big C, but is one thing when you give up something, it's like giving up coffee. It's one thing when someone takes your coffee away. They got a hat with the officials crew down. That's just my opinion against the Clippers, but it's all fair and love and war. NBA news, the great Donovan Mitchell, he showed no mercy, Big C, no mercy against the Brooklyn Nets. Think about this. The Nets were missing almost everybody. I think they had to play with a couple of coaches, Big C. Most of his starting lineup was gone. The biggest thing was trying to be aggressive, get downhill and make plays, get to the rim and finish. The great Donovan Mitchell said it was it was like practice. That was just his mindset from the jump start. Mitchell dropped 27 points. The Utah Jazz, they routed the short-handed Nets 118-88. It happened last night on Wednesday, Big C, on Hump Day. And the Jazz jumped to a 21-point lead in the first quarter against the Nets, but they were without their flame shooter in the great James Harden. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I think that's what they were doing, Charlton. They were looking like they couldn't find James Harden. They got to take shots. But Donovan Mitchell's been one of the premier players in the NBA Charlton over the past few years. And last night, that showed up. When you think about Utah as a team, Charlton, they can play. I know we had discussed, what would this game mean, as far as, the rankings and getting towards the playoffs. This shows how lackluster that the Nets are without James Harden. They can get it done without Kyrie Irving. They can get it done without Kevin Durant. But they cannot get it done without James Harden.
Just to expound on that, too, we were talking about the big three, and obviously the big three is you have Durant. I can't call him the best player now. And even
but he's missed over 20 games.
Yeah.
So, I can't even count him as part of the three.
Yeah, he's still getting the paycheck, but something's wrong with him. They don't want to see what it is, though. And then you have Kyrie Irving. I guess he decided to go out and do some other things that they had to keep him off the floor. But when
it was his birthday, so he took 3 days off to go celebrate.
Yeah, happy birthday. That's important. Everybody celebrates birthday. At the same time, you didn't notice them when they were not on the team when Harden was playing. And with Harden in the lineup, I really think he cemented his MVP last night, because when you take him out of the lineup, Big C, then the Brooklyn Nets are not a good team anymore. And, of course, they got to get Durant back and they got to get Kyrie Irving back. But I think no one can deny that if you don't have James Harden, you have a different kind of team. And I think that argument's settled. If you want to crown him the great Dennis Green is all fair level war. The Los Angeles Clippers star Kawhi Leonard gave the Spurs fans a little to boo about his return to San Antonio. Who would boo anyone down in the Alamo, Big Z? Leonard dropped 25 points. The Los Angeles Clippers, they never trailed, and they went down south, ate some deep fried food, and then they beat the San Antonio Spurs 134-101 on Wednesday night, Big Z. Your thoughts?
Well, that river walk was kind to the Clippers, Charlton, as they went down there and took a boat ride and just rode up into the AT&T Arena. And they booed Harden from the time he got off the bus till that game was over. Every time he touched the ball, there was a chorus of boos for the Clippers and James Harden, but it wasn't enough to stop him from knocking in 25 and walking out with a victory out of AT&T Arena.
Yeah, the great Kawhi Leonard, Big C, is all fair level where they did decide to get up Kawhi Leonard. Every time they booed Kawhi would drop a bucket he'd drop a basket in the bucket. Big C said, boo that if that makes sense to you. Also, when you think about NBA basketball, one more thing. On the Riverwalk, isn't that supposed to be some Southern hospitality when people come down to San Antonio? They want to take them on the Riverwalk, Southern hospitality, give them some libations, some deep fried food. And aren't you supposed to be more kind to the hospitality, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it's almost like a border war, Charlton, when you think about it. You got the little river that runs through the middle of the city. You can get on the little boats and go through there, but they have the great restaurants all through there. I don't know if it's true Southern hospitality. It's called Little Tex-Mex.
It's all fair. It's loving war. Kawhi's like, take this with you with that move that makes sense to you. Also, NBA basketball, the great Kristaps Porzingis, Big C, he dropped 29 points. He was doing his thing, and 7 Dallas players scored in double digits as the Mavericks, they ran away, Big C, with a 128-108 win over the Minnesota Timberwolves. That was Wednesday night. And the great Tim Hardaway Jr., Big C, he dropped 21 points off the bench for Dallas. The great Luka Doncic had 15. Rookie guard Anthony Edwards led Minnesota with 29 points, including 18 in the fourth quarter. Karl Anthony Towns dropped 22 points. Dallas has won 2 games in a row, while Minnesota has dropped his 3rd straight. Luka didn't have a great game, but he had his posse. His posse was on Broadway, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, one of the things about Minnesota is that they started playing better, Anthony Towns and Edwards. They found a niche between those two. It just shows they don't have enough depth in their lineup. But we know what Dallas is. It is a solid playoff team. I mean, they're going to probably end up about 4th in the West. And if you're getting points from Porzingis to Stork, 29. You're going to go deep into the playoffs because this is what they've been waiting on. His coming out party. Yeah, he came out. His posse's on Broadway. There was a crew back in the day. My posse's on Broadway. His posse was hanging out. It's all fair and love and war. Also, NBA, the great Dylan Brooks matched a season high, dropping 25 points for the Memphis Grizzlies. Defeated the Oklahoma City Thunder 116-107. It was Hump Day Wednesday night, Big C. In the opening game of a 4-game trip, Grayson Allen dropped 20 points. Jonas Valanciunas, Big C, added 16 points and 15 rebounds for the Grizzlies as they were trying to do their thing, who had won 4 of the last 5 to move on. And think about this, 1 game above 500. That's a big statement for that team for this season. The Grizzlies trailed by 12 in the 3rd quarter, Big C, but they closed out a quarter with a 32-12 win and took control for good, Big C. Your thoughts? Well, this is a team that's proven that they were better than what they were last year. I know at the end of the season that everybody wanted to have that playoff series to try to get New Orleans into the playoff, thinking that they were a better team than the Grizzlies, and the debate over the Rookie of the Year between Morant and Zion. Yeah. But here it is, the Grizzlies. Morant has this team, at 500, and the Pelicans are dreaming about a 500 season. But the Grizzlies are a lot better team with Jay Morant leading the charge there. Yeah. I want to ask you. We always talk about the Grizzlies. They used to be up in Vancouver, Canada, British Columbia, and then they moved to Memphis. And they're called the Grizzlies. I know that people brag about who has the better food, who has the better barbecue and steak, etc. I've never been to Memphis, but I hear it's a great place for blues, and I hear it's a great place for a barbecue. But do you think they have anything that resembles Grizzly on the grill, Pixie? Your thoughts? Well, Charlton, there's a lot of people that go bear hunting back there in Tennessee, Charlton, and Memphis is a wonderful city. Got the river that runs right through it also, and the hub of FedEx. Yep. But when you think about those teams, Charlton, you got to look at where they're going. Yeah. A lot of people thought that they might change the name once they got to Memphis, but they kept it the Grizzlies. If they wanted to keep it, if they want to change the menu, speaking of Grizzly, they could have the Big C burger. It's a tasty burger. It comes with exotic meats, and it goes great with the Budweiser 0% alcohol. It goes great with the Big C burger. This can't verify or deny that this Grizzly is the Big C burger. It's all fair level war. NBA Darius Garland, Big C, dropped 22 points, 9 assists. The great Jarrett Allen dropped 19 points and 9 rebounds. The Nines had it, Big C. The Cleveland Cavaliers used a balanced attack
They defeated the Chicago Bulls 103-94 on Wednesday night, and they did it without leading scorer Colin Sexton, Big C. The great Larry Nash Jr. dropped 14 points and pulled down 14 rebounds as Cleveland. They limited Chicago's top scorer, the great Zach LaVine, and Lauri Markkanen, Big C, in the second half. Isaac Okoro finished with 12 points for Cleveland, which won for just the fourth time in his last 10, so you can tell that no longer is the King James in town. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it's always breaking news when the Cavaliers win a game. I mean, this is a team that's been caught up in a lot of trade talk, and I think a lot of players have been distracted, and they were at ease last night knowing there was only a few more hours into the trade deadline, and they were able to concentrate on playing basketball. Chicago has gone so far down over the past 2 decades, Charlton.
Yep.
This is not the Michael Jordan Chicago Bulls.
These are not the Bulls you're looking for. The great Obi-Wan Kenobi, if that makes sense to you, NBA basketball. Orlando, I told you, Big C, when people take you to the I guess Disney World, it's a beautiful park down in Orlando. Sometimes players, they kind of relax because Mickey Mouse can make people put their guards down. And you see a big mouse, put your guards down. If that makes sense to you, Big C. And they did it to Brooklyn, and they did it last night to the Suns. Orlando's victory Wednesday night turns out to be even Fournier's last game for the Magic. With the NBA trade deadline approaching, the guard departed for yet another memorable moment. He scored the last of his 21 points in a difficult driving layup over Phoenix center DeAndre Ayton with 6.4 seconds left. And the Magic, they defeated the Suns 112-111, and rumor has it they had some good boys that were they saw a big mouse. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, you think about a road runner versus one of those big rats, Charlton. That big rat will normally win periodically. But he can use forelimbs to grab something with when that road runner only has a beak. And they did their work on the Sun last night. I guess they were a little road fatigue and burned out mentally from playing the Heat, Charlton, and they got their hats handed to them down in mouse country. Yeah, if you see a big mouse run across the floor and dunk a basketball, that would scare a lot of people. I think the Phoenix Suns, they were not expecting a mouse in the lineup. It's all fair. In level war, Big C NBA basketball, the great Terry Rozier dropped 25 points. Devontae Graham added 21. The Charlotte Hornets beat the Houston Rockets, as everybody does lately, 122-97 on Wednesday night. I thought the Rockets could have gotten a back-to-back win, but that didn't happen. The Rockets quietly, Big C, like a mouse, they turned to the loss column and snapped a 20-game win streak on Monday night, but they wanted to go back to the losing ways. It was the NBA's longest yet since Philadelphia's record-setting 28-game run across the 2014, 2015, and 2016 season. Charlotte won in Houston for the first time since December 22nd, 2004. Big C, they snapped a 15-game losing streak, and they did it without seeing a mouse. Big C, your thoughts? Well, Charlton, I think they were still popping too many Bud Lights after that win the other night, to snap that 20-game losing streak. But Charlotte came in there and lit the fire on those Rockets once again. And they didn't have takeoffs; they had crash down.
They had crash like Billy D. Williams said. Don't let the smooth taste fool you. It's all fair and love and war. We're going to take what's called the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout, and we're going to come back and talk more about NBA basketball. And in the words of the great Arnold Schwarzenegger, we'll be back. All right, we're back from the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. There's so many apps, and I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. I also want to say thank you to Xfinity Comcast TV and Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. Just like God said, let there be light. Open your cell phones and say play Big C Sports Podcast. You will see all of our apps pop up from anywhere in the world, and I really do appreciate the way things have grown with Big C Sports. I also want to say back to NBA basketball because it is fantastic. The great Pascal Siakam dropped 27 points. The Toronto Raptors broke a 9-game losing streak Wednesday night. Big C 135-111 rout of the Denver Nuggets. Nobody saw it coming. Toronto built a 24-point lead in the first half and shot 50%. They were 24-48, Big C, from three-point overall to win the first time since February 26th. And think about this. Anunoby did his thing. 18 of his 23 points before halftime. The Raptors and Norman Powell added 22. The great Kyle Lowry playing perhaps in his final game for Toronto on the eve of the NBA trade line. He finished with 8 points, 9 assists, and 5 rebounds. And he's also asking the Wizard of Oz, is there a place like home, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, everything is brighter down in Orlando. That's where the Toronto Raptors are playing, so there was a lot of heat going on in that city last night. But Toronto Raptors have been on the skids. This is a team that has not been home all year long. They've been forced to fly south for the summer and the spring, Charlton, down to Orlando. And last night they got their wings up under.
Yeah, they got their wings up under them. It's all fan love and war. NBA news, the great Giannis Antetokounmpo. He feared the worst when he saw Boston's Daniel Tias, Big C. Daniel Tias alone with the game on the line. Giannis could breathe a sigh of relief moments later. Tias' three-point bounced off the rim. I guess they turned off the magnet, if that makes sense to you. Milwaukee blew most of a 25-point lead before holding on for a 121-119 victory over the Celtics on Wednesday night. The last-second miss finished the Bucks' 8-game straight victory, Big C. And I did that almost having a sneeze, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Giannis had missed the previous game, Charlton, with a slight injury, and he come back in the lineup. Maybe he was not up to form, but this has been a battle consistently between the Celtics and the Bucks, Charlton. They're fighting for positioning in the East. Who's going to be in second place, or actually third place in the East.
Yeah, it's a big battle. It's coming down the stretch, and it looks like, man, who knows? Philadelphia? Is it going to be Brooklyn? Is it going to be Milwaukee? I think the Miami Heat just got a lot better today, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. You think about Karis LeVert, Big C, transition into fitting in with the Indiana Pacers, was delayed 2 months by kidney surgery to remove a cancerous mass. Thank goodness for medicine, Big C, and doctors. Acquired in a 3-team trade January 16th that involved all-stars James Harden, Victor Oladipo. LeVert did not play again until just recently. His 7th Pacers start was his best yet, Big C. He dropped 28 points in a 116-111 victory over the Detroit Pistons on Wednesday night. For a while, I thought maybe Reggie Miller was shooting up baskets again. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, yeah, the Pacers are one of those middle-of-the-road teams, Charlton. But LeVert, it's great that he could recover from that kidney surgery, Charlton, and resume his NBA career without any obstruction. But that's just going to add some depth with that lineup, along with Sabonis, Charlton. This is a team that could go deep into the playoffs in the East.
Yeah, they could go deep into the playoffs in the East. A lot of things happening in the world of NBA. When you think about it, Dorothy said in The Wizard of Oz, one of my favorite movies, there's no place like home. And a lot of NBA players, they understood that today, Big C. The trade deadline, we all know about that. The great Orlando Magic, they're adding all-star center Nikolai Vucevic, Big C, and Al-Farouq Amina to the Chicago Bulls. And then Vucevic, who's averaging a career-best 25 points and 11.8 rebounds this season, while shooting 40.6% from three-point range, is a good deal, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Vucevic is one of the better big men in the NBA, Charlton. When you think about it, he's one of only 4 players, that are averaging double-digit rebounds and over 24 points a game scoring. So this is a huge asset for Zach LaVine and the Chicago Bulls, Charlton. It's going to add a lot of depth and scoring to that lineup that it should help them out. Who knows? They may sneak into that 8th seed in the East. Yeah,
they may sneak in like that mouse snuck in in Orlando. The Magic knocked off the Suns when they saw that big mouse run up and dunk a basketball. Soft fair level war. NBA, Boston Celtics. There's no place like home, Big C. Finalizing a deal to acquire Orlando Magic guard Evan Fournier, Big C. In the second round, I think it was going to be 2 second-round picks. He's 28, averaging a career high 20 points a game, 3.7 assists per game this season. He's attempting a career best 7.2 three-pointers per contest. In 38%, he's knocking down 38% of them, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you look at the offensive firepower that is going to add to that Boston lineup. You talk about the victory they squeaked out against the Milwaukee Bucks. Now they add another shooter. Last year they lost, Kyrie Irving, and they replaced that. They lost Gordon Hayward also. But now they have another offensive weapon. We know that they can run with teams, Charlton. But when you get another player that can potentially add another 15 to 20 points in your lineup, that makes you a huge threat in the East.
It makes you a huge threat in the East. Big C's all fair and level were doing their thing. Another thing that could be a threat, Dorothy, the Wizard of Oz, she said, there's no place like home, Big C. The Detroit Pistons trading guard Delon Wright, Big C, to the Sacramento Kings for guard Corey Joseph and 2 second-round picks. Wright averaged just 10.5 points, 4.6 rebounds, and 5.1 assists for the Pistons this season. So not a big movie not a big newsmaker, Big C, but Joseph, 29, averaged 6.7 points in 43 games this season. Not really a lot to write home about, but as Dorothy said, there's no place like home, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, when you look at that trade, all you're going to do is say you went from bad to bad.
You went from bad to bad. You swipe left and swipe right. It's the same person. It's all fair and love it, word. Really appreciate that. You think about another team that said, Dorothy, there's no place like home. The great Denver Nuggets acquiring center JaVale McGee out of the University of Nevada from the Cleveland Cavaliers for Isaiah Herron, Big C. 2 featured second-round picks. McGee is 33 years old. He averaged 8 points a game and 5.2 rebounds this season, and he was with the Lakers when they won the 17th championship. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, he's won a couple of championships out there on the West Coast. He's won with the Golden State Warriors also. But what this brings to the Denver Nuggets is some defensive energy to spell Jokic in the middle, Charlton, when he needs a break. You got a guy who can hustle up and down the floor, who can protect the rim. This will be an asset for Denver.
It's going to be a huge asset for Denver because he has the frame, doesn't have to score a lot, but he's a big rebounder. I think he helped the Lakers last year along with Dwight Howard grab rebounds, and that's how they secured their 17th NBA championship. Also, NBA, there's no place like home. The great Kyrie Irving did not travel to the Brooklyn Nets with their game and a 3-game road trip while he deals with his family matter. The team announced Monday morning, March 21st. Kyrie's birthday was on Wednesday, March 23rd. Maybe it's a party, maybe it's a family matter. I hope it's all well. But at some point in time, they were cruising without him, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, he said it was a family matter. Your birthday is a family matter.
Yeah.
It's just ironic. You got to take some time off, 2 days before your birthday to get all that stuff arranged. I have some skepticism about his motives.
Yeah, well, I'll take a man at his word until we can prove it wrong. It's all fair level war. The great George Hill headed to the Philadelphia 76ers, part of a 3-way deal involving the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Oklahoma City Thunder getting rid of a lot of good players, Big C. And think about this. And the great New York Knicks, they're back on the block, Big C. Hill, who's averaging 11.8 points this season, was sent by the Thunder to the 76ers in exchange for Tony Bradley, Terrence Ferguson, and meanwhile ultimately heads from the Thunder to the Knicks, while Austin Rivers, Doc Rivers' son, goes from the Knicks to Oklahoma City. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Doc told his son, when I kicked you out of the house when you left for college, I was serious about that, and you wanted to follow me to Philadelphia, you still got to go.
Easy.
But this is a move, Charlton, for the 76ers that they needed another shooter, and they picked him up.
They picked him up. It's all fair and love and word, Big C. Toronto Raptors, there's no place like home. They really embody that. They've been playing in the United States since COVID showed up. The Toronto Raptors, they traded guard Norman Powell to Portland for Gary Trent and Rodney Hood. Big C. Powell's 27 years old, having a breakout season, averaging at a career high 19.6 points. And then when you look about three-pointers, shoots about 3 per game. And from three-point range, dropping in 43% from three-point range. Hood's 28 years old, averaging a career low of 4.7 points per game. It's amazing you could be an NBA player. You average 4.7 points a game, which is really 2 baskets and a free throw, and you still become a multi-millionaire. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I think this move was all about Powell, Charlton, when he scored 24 points in his swan song for the Raptors last night, moving on to Portland. I think what they're looking at with that lineup is trying to play some small ball, because now you got 3 guards that can play, and are you going to play them all in the lineup at the same time?
Yeah, it's a lot going on in the world of the NBA basketball. A lot of people are deciding where they're going to be. You think about Houston Rockets trading Victor Oladipo to Miami to the Heat. I think the Heat just got much better. Think about what this guy's doing. Oladipo's averaging 21 points a game. He's bringing you 5 rebounds a game. He's giving you 5 assists per game with the Rockets this season. He did that on a team that was not going anywhere, and he's a star player. You're going to bring 20 points a game into that Miami Heat lineup. Big C, the Heat just turned up the heat a little bit higher. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, this is similar to the move they made last year with Jimmy Butler, but now you got the same type of situation that you have in Portland. You got a lot of guards on your lineup, Charlton, and how are you going to play them? How are you going to interact? I mean, you don't really have any bigs. You got, I'm trying to think of Siakam. No, it's not. It's Oladipo. I can't even remember the big guy in the middle down in Miami, but that's your only big guy there in the middle, and he's only 6'9".
Yeah.
So this is a team that they're going to have to play fast because they can't play
Yeah, they got to play fast and physical. That's what Houston tried to do also when they had the Harden and they had Westbrook and they got rid of Clint Capella. So teams can play small ball, but they can shoot. Victor Oladipo is going to help any team that he lines up in the roster for. He's a solid player offensively and defensively. I think it's going to make them a lot better. Also, when you think about a team that had some, there's a rumor they were short on Hawks down in the city of Atlanta. A lot of Hawks didn't return from the West Coast trip. Big C, all fair level war. But the LA Clippers, it all started, their two-game loser streak started with the LA Clippers and finished up with the Sacramento Kings. But the Clippers, they acquire a veteran point guard, Rajon Rondo, Big C, from the Atlanta Hawks in exchange for former Sixth Man of the Year, Lou Williams. I think that's kind of an even trade, even though when it comes to playoff time, I like what Rondo can do on the court more than what Lou Williams can do on the court. So I think they got better playoff-wise, but regular season, I like Williams. But give me your feeling of who got better, Big C, your thoughts.
Well, I think, Atlanta got the advantage in this trade because you got a guy who was two-time Sixth Man of the Year in the NBA. So you know what he can do coming off the bench. Yes, Rondo has always been a great scorer general, but the Clippers need shooting. They need somebody who can create offense.
Yeah.
I know he can pass the ball, but you also need a guard who is going to put some fear on the defense and pull out somebody to allow their guys to roam through the paint.
Yeah.
I don't know if Rondo is going to be able to do that with the structure of the lineup that they have with the Clippers. Lou Williams, he doesn't have to break quarantine anymore now to go get chicken wings. He's at home with Magic City.
Yeah, the chicken wings in Magic City. His all fair level. I really love the fact that NBA has had a lot of guys on the move today, and everybody like Dorothy, the Wizard of Oz, no place like home, Big C. There's some teams that have been making a lot of trades, and I'm sure it's about, one thing we say, well, somebody got traded. A lot of guys get traded. But many guys who got traded, Big C, you had guys that were dropping down, they were making 7 points, 8 points a game. That's really not a splash in the bucket, if that makes sense to you, but sometimes you need someone to come in and relieve your starters. It's all fair and level. Well, we wish everybody the best. I tell you, Dorothy, the Wizard of Oz, she told us, there's no place like home, and I hope a lot of NBA players found a great home to call home, if that makes sense to you. I want to transition to the world of women's college basketball because they're also looking for the one shining moment, Big C. The Sweet 16 of the 2021 women's basketball tournament is already set, Big C. It's set for March Madness, and all the chalk on the chalkboards, the coaches try to draw up plays. All the number 1 and number 2 seeds advance to the regional semifinals. And then one upset of 6 teams seeded number 5 or lower are still playing. They've done a really good job of seeding these teams for the women's side. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you look at the selection committee, Charlton, when it came down to selecting the teams for the March Madness on the women's side, Charlton, they got it right.
Yeah.
When you think about putting in your number 1 seed and they're playing up to expectations, your number 2 seeds are playing up to expectations. That shows the parity in college basketball with women, Charlton,
Yep.
that the dominant teams are really the dominant teams, and you can always look forward to these women playing great competition.
Maybe they need to have more. They need to have a woman governor down in Georgia to get rid of Kemp, Big C, so they can stop messing with the vote. You're gonna tell a woman that she can't vote, and you can't bring water to someone down in 80-degree heat standing in line, or 90-degree heat and 90% humidity standing in line to vote, or even if it's cold and snowing, you can't bring someone water or anything to eat, and that's supposed to be a crime. It's all fair and level war. But as my partner tells me, the dirt comes out in the wash. Don't worry about it. Just put it through the wash. This marks the 3rd consecutive NCAA tournament that the top 8 seeds that they reached the regionals, Big C, but the first time since 2013 that was many as 6 teams out of the top 4 seeds have gotten this far. When you think about conferences, the Big Ten is the story in this field. The SEC began with 6 teams in the top 16 seeds, but only 2 remain. For the first time in conference history, 4 Big Ten teams advanced, Big C, to the women's Sweet 16. And then you think about Michigan making its first trip. Indiana returns for the first time since 1983. And then Maryland, the Terrapins, and Iowa, they were there in 2019, but with a very different teams. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I think about the maize and blue at Michigan, Charlton, when you want to talk about a basketball program that's really proud right now and exciting, when you got the men and the women both making it to the Sweet 16. So that university is looking for bragging rights on which side of the aisle is going to be able to go the longest. in the NCAA tournament, the men or the women.
Yeah, and I would just assume, they say when you assume you make a blankety blank of yourself, it's all fair level war. I would assume that the male programs, the men's programs, are much better funded than the women's programs. But when you look at the women's programs, they're really representing the schools in the Big Ten. But it's all fair and level war. They always give men more money because they just feel like it. For whatever reason, why do men make more money, Big C? Doesn't make any sense, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it all depends on where you look at it. If you look at a university like South Carolina, coached by Don Staley, she makes more than the men's basketball coach, Charlton. Not only that, the women's games at South Carolina, they average 18,000 fans per home game. So you think about the influence that they have on the economics of that athletic department. Gino Auriemma at UConn.
Yeah.
Here's a man who's been a perennial power in the Final Four year after year ever since he's been at UConn. One of the highest paid coaches in that university, Charlton.
Yep.
And you know he gets his benefits on the side.
Yeah, there are anomalies, but you would think if you go to a gas station, it costs you $4.05 for a gallon. It should cost the same if a man or woman is buying that gas. I mean, it's all fair level war.
That's what pay parity is all about, and
Yeah.
that's the thing that people have fought for decades in this country. When you think about women versus men in this country, where they make 83 cents for every dollar that the man makes, Charlton,
Yeah.
who makes the laws in this country? White men. They're not looking for parity.
Yeah, and that's white women that make more money than black women for the same tank of gas. It's all fair and level war, but some things are just not right. I want to jump to the world of the NFL. There's still, baseball is about to swing the bat coming up in April. A lot of people are going to be home, having their home standing in April, Big C. And then you have the NBA, people saying, like Dorothy, the Wizard of Oz, there's no place like home. Players have been trading residences today, Big C. But the NFL, no matter what sport is going on, the NFL is still, like Dorothy said, there's no place like home, and people call football home the way it makes them feel. You look at the Patriots' offensive lineman, Justin Herron, helped stop sexual assault attempt in Arizona. Even though it's not a football story, it's a football player. Oftentimes, men are very much maligned when it comes to that, Big C. But the Patriots' offensive lineman, Justin Herron, was one of two good Samaritans who stopped an attempted assault in Tempe, Arizona, Big C, over the weekend. Herron and the Phoenix native Murray, I think Rogers, were at Kiwanis Park in Tempe, Arizona. And I think that's home of Arizona State on Saturday as they heard a scream coming from a 71-year-old victim. The suspect, identified as a 30-year-old Kevin Calabro, allegedly pushed the woman to the ground and attempted to remove her undergarments, Big C, but he was stopped and detained by Herron and Rogers before the police arrived. And oftentimes these stories go unmentioned, but it's nice when you have men coming to the rescue of an innocent bystander, Big C. Your thoughts?
I don't know if these stories go unmentioned, Charlton. It's just people want to always focus on negative activities from athletes. That seems to be more of a headline grabber. People try to dehumanize so many athletes out there, Charlton, thinking about they're all about the money and all about themselves, and they forget about the goodness that these athletes were raised with.
Yeah.
They were raised by a woman, raised by a man, and they were taught etiquette in life, Charlton, and that's what Justin Herron represented in this situation, a good upbringing. And I always talk about parental involvement when we talk about athletes.
Yeah.
What do you teach your son? What do you teach your daughter about character? And this is a perfect example of it. It won't get the big headlines, Charlton, because it's not a trade story.
Yeah.
It doesn't involve money about an athlete. But these are the type of things they need to talk about more with athletes. How they benefit society in ways of just entertaining.
Yeah, more than just entertaining. And, we opened up talking about African-American history and how people can do the right thing. Also, what they're trying to do, even in the world of politics. I know President Biden spoke today, and people are still trying to criticize a man that's trying to create equality and egalitarianism. At the same time, the governor of Georgia decides that he wants to makes it more difficult for people, like even the woman who was victimized. I know a different state, but there are 71-year-old men and women that vote, and you have a governor trying to say, we don't want everyone to vote unless they look like that person in the mirror. So I really appreciate some NFL football players that did the right thing. We know if they were ever accused of something, it would make the news every single day. But they did a good thing, and it's probably not going to be talked about too much. But I really wish them the best. But I also want to bring up something, not to jump on anybody. Anyone in this world with all the challenges of COVID and people just trying to do the right thing, people doing each other wrong and pretending like they didn't, because sometimes people just don't care. But I think about this. You think about the NFL, and I grew up watching the Raiders, grew up in California all my life, and the Raiders had been a staple of California sports until this past season when they moved down to Las Vegas, Nevada, Big C. And talking to a lot of former Raiders, there's a golf tournament I was going to do up in Napa with some former players that played for the Raiders. And you think about John Gruden and his plan for the Raiders. A lot of people ask that, but you're down south. What do you see from a different perspective? Maybe it doesn't matter as much to you, but do you think they're heading in the right direction? What is his game plan, Big C? Your thoughts?
I mean, when you talk about direction, I mean, they won 19 games, I believe, over the last 3 seasons. So if that's riding the ship, Charlton, I don't know what the perspective is of the fans out there on the West Coast. And, when you think about the doldrums of this organization, I know for years the Raiders was one of the proudest organizations in the league, Charlton. It was always a place that was revered by the rest of the players in the league. Either you wanted to play for them and you didn't want to play against them because they were dirty and nasty, Charlton. They cheated a lot on the field. But, when you think about the dismantling of this organization by John Gruden since he's been there, and I know you've made the comment a few times that if he hadn't made the playoffs in 3 years, that he'll quit. So he's proved himself a liar. I think he was a Trump supporter, and he learned how to lie real well in that situation. But I think the NFL is better when the Raiders are relevant.
Yeah.
But it's going to be very difficult for the Raiders to be relevant when you think about John Gruden consistently getting rid of the better players on the team. You got the Kansas City Chiefs in that division. You got the San Diego Chargers in that division. And you have the Denver Broncos. All of those teams are trying to get better. We're all confused with what the Raiders are trying to do.
Well, don't be confused. Just like young people, some parents do a very good job just trying to do things the right way. And some kids, they're going to prove their parents wrong. I mean, whether it's John Gruden and whether it's Mark Davis and the late Al Davis' father, most fathers try to tell their kids to do the right thing, how to do better in life and how to be better in life. And sometimes kids believe they don't want to listen to their parents, and they think they know more than their parents. So they want to tell their parents, you don't know what you're talking about. Things were different when you were a kid. But I still think about, because I've known so many Oakland Raiders over the years. In fact, many of them have been up in Northern California, Big C. At the same time, we're deep into the John Gruden experiment for him to not have torn down the last good roster that his team had, but also to tear down the first phase of a rebuild in the wake of his initial teardown. And maybe we call this, a meta teardown, if that makes sense to you. But I still go back to John Gruden is a media love, but Al Davis didn't care about the media. He was they called him a maverick because he went against the current. I still wonder what Mark Davis did not like about his father so much, that his father helped build the NFL in diversity and giving women a chance, and his father was very successful, a multiple Super Bowl championship owner. So what do you say if you have a father that fires a man for the same thing we're seeing now, and the son is still trying to tell his late father he didn't know what he was talking about? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you got to realize when Al Davis was running the organization, and he gave his son an office there in the facility, Charlton, he didn't give him a phone and a computer. He gave him a Pac-Man game and let him sit there and eat up the dots. That's all he did all day long. So he paid no attention to the structure of football. And it's very evident in his decisions that he's made since he's had sole ownership of the organization. I mean, he'd probably been better off letting his sister run the organization, just like the McCaskill family did in Chicago, in letting George Halas's daughter run the organization there, Charlton. But Mark Davis, he's a dinosaur as far as thinking. He thinks that he can rehash things of how his dad did it by going back watching videotapes of the organization and the players of that era. It's not going to happen in the modern-day NFL. John Gruden was 10 years removed from it. He could talk about the game, but he had not interacted with the game, and that was the difference, is that he was so far behind the modern coaches in the NFL. You're going to win games in the NFL just based on talent. I mean, look at the New York Jets with Adam Gates. He didn't have a clue, but he still snuck up and won 3 games as the Jets coach. That's the same thing with John Gruden. Standing on the sideline, making, growling faces that bite your lip, and putting on the wrong hat. He didn't even know he was in Las Vegas. He
Yeah.
had an Oakland Raider hat on his head
Yeah.
and said that was
It's good enough.
the equipment boy's mistake. What
Yeah.
he couldn't read, so that just told you that he was not in touch with what's going on in Las Vegas with the Raiders.
Yeah, there's a lot of former Raiders. They don't like what's going on. Not only have they left California for Las Vegas, and once you see all the bright lights, then people might say, hey, what a great place to go. But there's a lot of pain in that city, too. Bright lights are not enough. But it's all fair and Livermore. And I guess Mark Davis is still trying to prove his father was wrong. I want to jump to the role of the NHL, National Hockey League. You look at referee Tim Peel. He was banned for a hot mic call, Big C. The Nashville Predators had a penalty. And he mentioned that, I mean, he's not going to work another game for the NHL after getting caught saying that he wanted to give the Nashville Predators a penalty in their win over the Detroit Red Wings on Tuesday night. And NHL Senior Executive Vice President of Hockey Operations, Colin Campbell, made the announcement Wednesday morning saying that Peel would no longer be working NHL games now or in the future. And he's been, think about what's happened to him. He's been an NHL official since October of 1999, and he refereed 1,324 games entering this season. I wonder how many times he had a makeup call that wasn't on the mic. Big C, your thoughts?
I mean, this is something that is always discerning about officials at games, Dolphin. We've seen this. You talked about it a lot out there in Los Angeles, how the Atlanta Hawks got jobs playing against the LA Clippers.
Yeah.
We talked about a few weeks ago where, you know, the Dallas Mavericks only shot 5 free throws in an NBA game.
Yeah.
You shoot that before half the
warm-ups.
quarter is over, but they only got 5.
Yeah.
And so you always wonder, because of the betting angles now in professional sports,
Yep.
that it's legal all over the place. And you get a referee caught on a hot mic saying, hey, I need to call a penalty to give this team a disadvantage
Yeah.
to allow the other team to score.
Yeah.
I wonder what the over-under was in that game, Charlton,
Yeah.
to want to allow the other team a better opportunity at scoring. And we see that in all professional sports when referees are swallowing the whistle or throwing a flag and people are saying, okay, they got replay, let's look at this.
Yeah.
And they don't, or they don't throw the flag, Charlton. So this really sheds a bad light on officials across the spectrum.
Yeah.
I think, from my perspective, it shows what has been going on for years in professional sports.
Yeah, we know, and we heard about the Chicago White Sox in back in the day. It's all fair and level war, but NHL is just trying to clean things up. I want to run down quickly Big C's NHL top 10 power rankings. You think about the Tampa Bay Lightning, Big C. When lightning strikes, you have a chance of smoking somebody on this, especially when lightning strikes on ice doing their things. The Las Vegas Golden Knights coming in number 2. Number 3, the Carolina Hurricanes coming in Big C's power rankings, the top 3 in the NHL. Number 4, the Florida Panthers, Big C, coming in number 4 on Big C's power rankings. Number 5, the Colorado Avalanche. No one likes to have an Avalanche, Big C, especially the real ones. Number 6, the Washington Capitals. Ovechkin has returned that cup. Number 7, the New York Islanders. Number 8, the Toronto Maple Leafs, Big C. Number 9, the Minnesota Wild. Coming in at number 10, the Boston Bruins. And hopefully none of them had any complaints about the referee that worked their games, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I think, you really have to pay attention to the Lightning down in Tampa, Charlton.
Yeah.
They're looking to repeat as the Stanley Cup champions. I mean, there's been a lot of excellent athletics played down in the city of Tampa. The Lightning won the Stanley Cup last year. The Buccaneers won the Super Bowl, and the Rays made it to the World Series. They were cheated by the Dodgers, and we know how the officials talk behind the scenes on letting stuff go through.
Yeah.
And we saw some of that in the mid-strike zone against the Dodgers. But, you always got to pay attention to what those Las Vegas Golden Knights have done. You think about their inception into the NHL, and they've been a perennial power in the West. They've actually been the best team. They made it to the Stanley Cup in their inaugural season, and they're looking to represent the Western Division once again.
Yeah, they're trying to do it once again. Final story tonight's NBA basketball on March 25th. Portland at Miami. It's getting hot down in Miami, Big C. Washington at New York Knicks. LA Clippers and San Antonio Spurs, Big C, doing it again. Philadelphia at the LA Lakers. And then Golden State at the Sacramento Kings. It's all fair and level war. I wish everybody nothing but the best in the world of sports. Big C. Back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, rumble, young man, rumble, with all you've got to use. how can you lose? Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, I think you really got to look at that game against the Sixers and the Lakers, Charlton. You're talking about a team that's shorthanded. When you look at the Sixers with the trades that they made, those players are not going to be in the lineup, and Embiid has not been around either. If they beat the Lakers tonight, the Lakers, who knows how far they can fall.
Yeah.
Once again, I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, doctors, and first responders. They'll be there to pick them up if they hit the ground too hard.
Dorothy, there's no place like home. There's no place like home. You can find home every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As my mama always says, there's never ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and ask for help, because no man, woman, or child should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports Show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.